I'm Rich Board. I'm a realtor with J-Par Maryland Living. I'm here with John Milleker, photographer in the Maryland area. How are you?
How you doing, Rich?
Good.
Nice to see you again.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of the project we did with the listing.
That was a
recently.
fun project.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun.
It was interesting. Yeah. One thing I think before we get too far into it, I would like to talk about the street view issue that you came up with. Yeah.
Well, just to kind of recap, the last property that we worked on, of course, we did the real estate photography. We did a lot of the interior virtual tour stuff, which we'll talk a little bit about.
Yeah.
But one thing that I noticed on your property was there just wasn't a Google Street View of that road.
No.
And Google's changed it around a couple times, but I think now they call it a blue line. But basically, whenever you're going to a property and you go onto Google Street View or Google Maps,
right,
you can drag that little yellow guy onto an intersection and almost kind of ride that road without doing anything. And because we're so big into virtual tours and people kind of getting a good inside and out view of a property, what's the first thing you do when you maybe even go to a business or a restaurant? I know what I do is I will go into that Google Street View and I'll kind of get an idea, where am I going to park?
Right.
Is it is there plenty of parking? I kind of want to know where I'm going a little bit ahead of time. And I think that a lot of people that are interested, that are looking for a property, probably are going to do the same thing. They want to know what the neighborhood's like. They want to know how the access in and out of that road is going to be like.
Right.
So when I saw that your property didn't have one, that was one thing that we just wanted to do. It's something that we do for not only do we want to help kind of map streets that are not there, but I want to make sure that there's something there for your customers,
right,
so that they can say, hey, I want to look at this house. Let me bop into the Google Street View. Let me look at as I said, the access roads. Let me look around the neighborhood. Let me look at the house from coming different directions in the street, and that's what we did.
Yeah. We
came up a little bit early. And we have a rig on top of our vehicle that we can kind of do very similar to the Google Street View car with a 360-degree camera, and then we can upload that to Google. Now, the problem with that is it can take sometimes 2 weeks, sometimes a little bit longer.
Yeah.
But we got it in there, and I think 2 weeks, probably less than 2 weeks, it was up and live for your customers to see.
Yeah. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
Along with that, when we were filming that, when we were taking the pictures of that property, what are some of the obstacles within the house that we ran into?
Well, I brought a couple tools with me, and I think that's a good question. Talking about some of the tools, not only does your photographer have a camera and lighting set up so that they can photograph, all the highlights of a property. But sometimes, it's just a little bit small. And photographers and realtors alike, they don't want to ever misrepresent a space as being wide open.
Right.
You ever look at a hotel or maybe a bed and breakfast or something like that, and you're like, man, look at all this space for activities, and you get there and you can touch both walls with your hands. So that's definitely a hard thing to do, is to make sure that we're not we're not making the space out to be larger than it is. So the photographer has a problem. Do I shoot with an extra wide angle lens and suffer from that? Or do I kind of pick out bits and pieces? Not only do we photograph the great features of a property, but we also do the 360-degree tours. And that's what I think is the obstacle. And this is what I feel is almost the solution.
Yeah.
We have several different ways to photograph a house, and the way number one is we can photograph on this is called a nodal mount, and what happens is, as you're shooting a property, you've got your camera, you've got your 180-degree lens, and you're moving it around, and then at the end you stitch it together.
Right.
That is good for large areas. This here is really good for smaller areas where I can just pop this in an area. I could take a photograph right now, and pretty much everything within inches of the lens is captured and can be seen as a virtual tour. So that's the obstacle, is making sure that we don't oversell the space of a room, but I think the fix is maybe also adding a virtual tour as well.
Yeah, and we those pictures that we took, it only took a few seconds, right? 10? Was it about 10, 20 seconds?
When we shoot with the 360, it's a little bit on the slow side. I'm going to say it probably was close to maybe 20, 25 seconds.
Yep.
Because not only I've got a tablet that is looking through the camera, I've got to get everybody out of the room. I've got to make sure that there are no little ones running around like our last property.
Yeah, that was fun.
And then, we're kind of hiding away. I've got a tablet, and I'm shooting several different exposures. And some photographers, would be called HDR photography, which kind of think it's a dirty word in my book. Sometimes it's necessary, but the cameras have an HDR built in. I don't like the built-in stuff. I like using a program that blends it in my style. Not saying that that's a bad thing for anybody using what's coming out of there, but there are definitely bad parts of HDR and good parts of HDR. But that's why it took so long. It was taking a normal exposure, as far as the exposure calculator on that camera is taking over exposures and taking under exposures. And the reason for that is, especially if you've got a picture window or you've got windows to the outside, if you're photographing for the light in a room, all those windows are going to go nuclear white on you.
Right.
No data whatsoever. So that's why we do several exposures in that camera, which is different from a camera like this, where you're actually using flash to balance things out. And instead of doing those HDRs and those exposures of higher or lower, we're shooting for the room, we're shooting for the ambient light, we're popping a flash, and then we're popping a flash on the windows so that we can get all those blended. And they blend a little bit different.
Yeah. And I think you even added a little extra with the drone. The drone, I thought about bringing the drone today, but maybe that'll be a segment we can do a little bit later. But we are 107 certified with the FAA, and that's another aspect. Not, Google Street View and the Google Satellite View may have something. I've seen Street Views and satellites 10 years or older, and it's not always going to get the perspectives you want. It's a top-down perspective, which is great, but when we fly the drone, we like to make sure that not only do we get a video pass around the property, but we're getting all those different angles from up in the air as well. And that's really good as well, because a lot of the stuff that we don't really do it with real estate people, but we do it with some other organizations that we can send the drone up and we can take high-resolution photos or videos of maybe the roof for an inspection or any kind of connections up there as well. Right. Yeah. Kind of going back to, we touched base a little bit in the beginning of this, the virtual tour.
Yes.
Now, I know on the buyer side and the realtor side, each platform, whether it's Zillow or Realtor.com, has a different location where they stick that virtual tour, and none of them are obvious. So you kind of have to dig into that.
I was really surprised in that, where you had to kind of go digging for that virtual tour. And I think that's probably a really important thing, because especially now, you could probably go on Zillow and you can go on those sites and look, but you may be missing things where if you speak with a trusty realtor like Rich here, he may be able to sit there and say, hey, look, these are the properties that I think fit your criteria, but don't forget, there's also a virtual tour. Maybe you would link that. But I think that's very important, because I couldn't find it. I saw the listing and I asked Rich, I said, are you having a problem with getting the virtual tour? And he says, no, it's up there. And we sat down on the computer and he pointed out where it was. And it was, as he said, not in a very obvious spot, which is kind of scary, because I brought some statistics here. In 2017, the National Association of Realtors, they kind of got an interest in virtual tours. Are they hurting or helping the market? And they came up with the fact that more than half of the adults in the United States who use the internet have taken a virtual tour. 54% of buyers will not look at a property unless it has a virtual tour. And 50% of people surveyed found virtual tours very useful in making their decision. Also, Realtor.com had a study, and they found listings with a virtual tour get 87% more views than those without virtual tours. And if anybody out there has not taken a virtual tour, what do you think? How can you explain to me and your audience what a virtual tour is? I can talk nerd lingo all day, but kind of explain it to us in somebody that doesn't photographic what a virtual tour is.
Well, it's simple. You can basically just sit at your computer or your phone and click through the property. You can get a full 360 view of each room. Go down the hallway and check out the next room. Look at the bathrooms. It really does give you a more in-depth understanding of the property. The only better thing than that would to actually be to walk through the property, but it is definitely a step above just pictures. And for it to be hidden so well on these apps is funny.
That's really scary to me.
And it's still being utilized, more than half of the time. So whatever platform figures out how to make it more noticeable and easier to find will probably win out.
I bet.
So
I think it's the future.
Yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm. Aside from that, for any realtors that might be watching, what should they look for in a photographer when they want to take pictures of the listing?
You should look for a photographer that has experience. They have photographs, and they have maybe go word of mouth with maybe some of your realtor friends. Talk to them and see who they've worked with, and you want people that come in and make you look like a rock star, and make the property look like a rock star, make the homeowner that is selling the property look like a rock star. And that's very difficult. There's no one set manual of, hey, go in here and photograph this and this and this. The photographer needs to look at, oh man, is that all new? Is that all new kitchen appliances? Right. Okay, well, we're going to make sure that's a photo. Right. Tell me about the property, Rich. Tell me what's here and what's there, and sometimes as photographers we're too busy worrying about all the technical stuff. We don't always know what makes the realtors kind of click their heels together and go woohoo when a amazing property. So somebody that communicates well as well. Talking about the virtual tours, Rich talked about how you can walk in and out and up and down hallways. Well, you don't want to, as a photographer, I don't want to bill you for a whole bunch of photos that make no sense. But there is a logical progression of, I'm going to make a virtual tour photo down the driveway and at the front door.
Right.
And in the hallway, and then give you the option to split off into this room or go upstairs or go downstairs. For me, and I think this is more of an artistic kind of thing, but for me, I really want someone to look at your listing and feel like they're home. Why are we doing this unless for making someone, be able to put themselves into that house and say, I can call this home. Right. And I can walk through that house and not have any surprises when they say, Rich, I want to tour this property.
Yeah. To speak on the effectiveness of pictures, as an agent, I had a buyer, I sent her a number of pictures or listings, and she looked through them and she's like, these are all dumps. That was her. The pictures were not well. So I was like, let's just look. So I had to take a little more nuance with her and try to convince her to go look at the properties in person, because
now you said the pictures weren't very good.
Pictures were not.
These
good.
weren't my photos, were they?
They were not yours.
Okay, just making sure.
Yeah, they were not my listings. Because when you enter a property, I think lighting has a big effect on the property, and like you said, not misrepresenting that property. So getting the lighting in there, but not making it look like it's like the most well-lit room in the world. However, still being able to
you still want to
capture
have the
truth.
Right. I could sit in there with a flash and I can set that thing on 11 and just nuke a room.
Right.
But I lose how the light fall off on certain lighting features in the room look.
Yeah.
I miss what how the natural light coming in through a window kind of rakes across the features of a room,
right.
and that's also a very delicate balance.
Yeah.
You don't want to misrepresent the size, but you don't also want to either hit it with as much light as you can, or maybe just sit there and say, "Oh, the heck with it! I'm going to take my own cell phone photos, and they may be blurry or they may be dark."
Yeah,
absolutely. If anything that we've learned, anybody listening out there, it's well known that if you're selling something online or selling a listing, it's well known that the photographs really can set the sale in motion. For sure.
True. Absolutely. Well, before we wrap up, do you have any contact information if anybody's looking for a photographer?
If you're in the Maryland area, we can be reached at www.johnmilleker.com, JohnMilleker.com. You can see some of our work there. You can search for John Milleker Photography on Facebook, and you can also reach us at 410-929-4624. Rich, I had a lot of fun today. Thanks for inviting me out.
Appreciate it.
Looking forward to when we work together soon.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
All right.